Hi everyone, we're going to start today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to the Office of Career Strategies Management Webinar Series for Alums. I'm Elaine Mazzarella and I'm the Director of Career Services and Alumni Advising. Before we get started, a few things to note. This webinar will be recorded and available via the Office of Career Strategies website, ocs.yale.edu, in approximately 2 weeks. You can view the webinar via your computer or mobile device. Questions will be taken at the end of the webinar via the Q&A box, so please mute your mics. Please type in your questions into the Q&A box during the webinar, and then they'll be taken at the end. So let's get started. Today, 3 practical steps for professional success is presented by Precious Williams Owodunni. Precious is a trusted advisor for emerging senior leaders. As founder and president of Mountaintop Consulting, she assists high-pack individuals, growing companies through strategic planning, executive coaching, and business development training. Her client roster includes Boston Consulting Group, Limestone Investments, Shell Oil, Lime Rock Resources, Johnson & Johnson, Kirkland & Ellis, and other leading financial services, law, and private equity and consulting firms. Before establishing Mountaintop Consulting, Precious was a vice president at Goldman Sachs, where she made private equity investments and served as an investment banker to energy, retail, and industrial companies. As a graduate of Yale University and Yale Law School, Precious is very active in the Houston community. She currently serves as a board member of Cadence Bank Corporation, the Houston Parks Board, and the Episcopal Health Foundation, and as an advisory board member of Amazing Place. Precious has received a Houston Business Journal Women Who Mean Business Award for professional services in recognition of her career achievements, community involvement, and leadership. We are so thrilled today to have Precious leading this webinar. So now let's get started and begin today's webinar.
Thank you so much, Elaine. It is a pleasure to be with you all today. Great to be in the company of Yaleys, including fresh off our success at the game. December is always a funny time for me. It harkens back to 27 years ago now, when I was anxiously rushing home from school each day to see what my early decision would be. Would I get the little envelope or the big envelope? And getting the big envelope changed my life in meaningful ways. So I'm excited to be with you and help you see the same kind of progression and success that attending Yale, both as an undergrad in Branford College and later in Yale Law School, has brought for me. So today we're going to talk about professional success and progression and development, which is how I currently spend my time. We work with leading companies through consulting, training, and coaching. The core idea being that in order to be truly successful, you've got to do it in a way that's authentic for you. So please listen closely as we talk today and make sure that you take away not just these practical tips, but that overarching idea that this can work for you if you are true to yourself, and importantly, that success is not linear. What we've seen in our work with great companies, and frankly, what I've seen in my own life, is that it is very hard to know what will come. But the things that we're going to talk about will be helpful and essential no matter where your path takes you. The core question that I get in my work as an advisor and a strategist for companies and high-performing individuals is, Precious, can I do this? Precious, can I do that? The underlying idea being, can I find success and, more importantly, or equally importantly, fulfillment in my career? And what I say to my clients, and what I want to say to you, fellow Yaleys, is the answer is absolutely yes. if you have a plan and if you're authentic to yourself. So today what we're going to discuss is how to build a winning plan that will allow you to both hone and promote your expertise, to enhance your presence so that you are memorable and form the relationships that you need and that you want, and most importantly, that you commit to actions that will allow you to achieve your goals and to achieve success in however you define it. So let's start with expertise. That's hopefully the easy part. That is why we went to Yale. That's why we've been working so hard our whole lives to figure out how to get really good at some area. And hopefully it's an area in which you have some passion. But the important thing to keep in mind is that it's not enough. Whether you're an amazing doctor or you've done some research that is going to be groundbreaking in environmental science, or you're in Yale College and trying to figure out what you want to do when you grow up, know that the technical learning and the expertise that you develop will be critical, but it is not sufficient. So build on that and don't stop there. You know, as unnatural as it is for some of us, particularly those of us who, like me, are introverts, it is important not just to build expertise and to have it, but to get the word out about it. So please know that no matter where your career or your life takes you, it is important that you proactively let people know about what you have to offer. And, you know, in whatever setting, you need to get that message out, not just within your immediate team or within your office, but also more broadly in your company or your organization, and then beyond your organization, including on the internet. You know, we all know that when we meet a new person or we have a meeting scheduled with someone we haven't met, you know, we go to Dr. Google to find out, you know, who is Jane Doe? And, you know, what shows up, who you are according to Google, is as important as a lot of the other things that you do. So, you know, definitely take that to heart and actively manage your brand in the most authentic way. Your brand is what people are saying about you when you're not in the room, what people understand about you when they do that Google search. So don't let the Kardashians put you off. You have a brand too, and it's important to understand what that brand is and what it means to people. And importantly, what you want it to be. So when do you want to be the go-to person? When do you want people to think of you when they have a problem? When do you want people to think of you for a new career opportunity? You know, make sure that whatever the answer to that question is, that comes through very clearly in how you talk about yourself, but also how you present yourself more broadly. So the question becomes, how, given all that, and whatever your career goals or even your personal goals are, how do you raise your profile? You know, there are lots of ideas on the screen right now, from, you know, nurturing key relationships, including the relationships that you built while you were at Yale, and, you know, keeping those going, to serving in leadership roles in your community so that people get to know you and you build a reputation for someone who, you know, brings their skills back to help others, or you establish yourself as a thought leader on LinkedIn. You know, the one I draw your attention to most is in the orange box. You know, the most asked question in business is, what do you do? And you should craft a memorable elevator speech for yourself that answers that question well, so that people in the few seconds that they have with you understand very quickly what you do best and for whom. And as you translate that to your online life, make sure that that is what follows you around on your LinkedIn profile and elsewhere. You know, in my case, my LinkedIn headline says, I'm a trusted advisor to business and law firm leaders. That is what I do best and for whom I do it. So we've been very purposeful about crafting that brand do that for yourself too, please. Let people know what you do, or in some cases, when you're early in your career, what you aspire to do, so that you start to proactively manage your brand and your profile. The next challenge with that, and the next important step, is to make sure that how you interface with people reinforces the brand that you're trying to develop. So, question for you, when you look at that screen, what comes to mind, or what do you understand about the woman who's on the left side there? And oftentimes, feel free to use your chat box if you want to provide comments. What we often hear is that she looks approachable, she looks happy, she looks excited about her work, she looks professional, she looks competent. And then when we turn our attention to the gentleman on the right side of the screen, we hear similar feedback, which is, he seems upset about something. He's definitely less happy to be here than she is. Maybe has just gotten into an argument, maybe he woke up on the wrong side of the bed. But whatever the case, he has an unapproachable attitude and seems disengaged in some way. And, what is so striking about that exercise every time I do it, whether it's in a small group with clients or doing a keynote speech in a room with 200 people, is that we all very quickly, jump to conclusions about these images. And the message here is that that is the process that each of us is subjected to in all of our professional and personal interactions. A picture is, in fact, worth 1,000 words. And particularly as we think about our career impact and our career goals, we have to be sensitive to that. How do we show up? Do we show up with an impression, giving an impression of engagement and excitement and a willingness to jump in and work hard? Or are we doing things consciously or subconsciously that create barriers that can hamper our ability to form the relationships that we need to get ahead in work and in life? I will tell you, this is a low point in our webinar today, where I am being forced to cite a study from a Princeton researcher, but we will give them this one little tidbit, which is, one of the foremost studies on first impressions. And what's so interesting about the data here, which is reinforced by other research, is that, first impressions happen in 1/10 of a second, if you can imagine that. So quickly, almost immediately. And the data that we get, the real facts that we get from longer exposure to people, do not significantly change that first impression. So that's why we have this here. That's why we emphasize it with both emerging leaders and senior leaders who are trying to get ahead. You have to be mindful of how you show up and how you're using your presence to reinforce the interests and the goals that you have for yourself. So step number 3 is last but certainly not least. One of the most important things that we can do for ourselves is to commit to actions. And each of those words was chosen very meaningfully. Commitment is a big thing. It's not, think about what you want to do, hope for something great. It is commit. So not only deciding what you want, but deciding that you're going to do something about it and commit to making that happen. And which leads to the second important word here, action. So not a thought, not a hope, not a wish, not a dream, but what action are you willing to take to achieve the success or the outcome that you want, personally or professionally? As we discussed at the outset, one of the most important things that we have to accept as we start to try to chart our careers and our paths is that it is not linear. It sounds so easy. And, if I were to go back 27 years when I was applying to college, I thought the ladder to success was in fact a ladder, that if I did what I was supposed to do at each rung, I'd have the opportunity to keep going up in a very straight way. And it turns out that success looks a lot more like a ball of string, or, for those of you who've been on a playground recently, kind of like a jungle gym or a rock wall, where sometimes you have to go to the side in order to move up. And it's not always clear the exact path. So two people going up the same rock wall could take very, very different paths and get to the same place. So please be mindful of that. I'll tell you, in my own career, when I was applying to Yale undergrad, I was at a school for health professions and thought I was going to be a pediatrician. I got to Yale, got a little taste of that, and then decided, no, not for me. I think I'm going to go to law school. Then I got to law school and realized, oh my God, what lawyers do has nothing to do with what I've seen on television. So before you know it, I found kind of my calling in investment banking and spent, almost a decade doing that with great enjoyment before ultimately deciding I was ready to strike out on my own and start a business now 10 years ago. So, each of those steps was meaningful. Each of those steps, in ways I could not have anticipated, built on the previous ones. So please be open to that. Even as we talk about planning, know that your plan is just to start you down the path with meaningful actions. And you will have to trust yourself and listen to yourself, again, being authentic, to make sure that you take the right next step to keep going towards the success that you've defined. The key idea with planning is writing it down moves the process along significantly. So even when we don't know exactly how we're going to get there, the process of literally putting pen to paper increases the likelihood that you will achieve your goal by as much as 80%. So start by writing it down. And, this is going to sound very analog, and I've already dated myself by telling you when I graduated from college. But, literally putting pen to paper and the ways in which the neurons in your brain process that, the process of writing it out by hand, really impacts the likelihood that you will achieve it. I've done that at various points in my life and literally picked up a journal from 6 years prior to find that I was doing exactly what I planned out then, but hadn't looked at that piece of paper for 6 years. So let's trust the science there and really, really go with it. So even as we go through these exercises today, please literally write your answers down on paper and it'll help it stick. So let's brainstorm together about goals. And just for the sake of this exercise, try to think of one thing that you'd like to accomplish in the next 12 to 18 months, whether that's a career or business goal, a personal goal, a professional development goal, something you want to learn, or maybe it's a goal in terms of how you want to engage in your civic and professional communities. So think of a goal and write that down really quickly, please. So as you do that, please be mindful that there are, like so many other things, a little bit of a right and a wrong way to do this whole goal thing. And in particularly, you've probably heard it before, but in order for your goals to really be achieved and to stick, they should be SMART, which means specific, measurable. I can objectively measure whether you've achieved that thing. Action oriented, which means driven by your actions, not things that you want to happen to you. Realistic, which is important. I would like to sing like Whitney Houston, but that is not realistic. So let's stick with what we can actually achieve. And then, very importantly, time bound. So some examples on the screen, over the next 18 months, I will get to know 2 senior leaders in my company. So that's specific. It's not, I want to get to know some senior folks. I want to get to know 2 senior leaders. It's measurable. It's action oriented, so I will do something. 2 people in the course of 18 months is probably realistic, and it's time bound. You've given yourself an important deadline that you can use to make sure you're on track. So will you take a minute, please, and whatever the category of your goal, whether it's career, professional development, civic engagement, or personal goal, try to write it down in a form that is SMART. So make sure as you write down your own goal, it's specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and bound by time, please. If you're struggling with this, by the way, please feel free to leave a comment or a question in the chat box, and we're happy to give you some feedback on your goals as we move into the Q&A. So once you have your goal written down, then I'd like you to evaluate it. Let's go a little bit deeper to make sure your goal will stick. The first question is, now that you have your goal, what training, are there skills that you need to make sure you can achieve that thing? And similarly, are there people, so often we assume that if we want to do something, we've got to do it on our own. But that is not the case. Frankly, the existence of the Yale Career Services and this webinar prove that you have a support network and resources to tap. So what relationships, what people do you need to help you achieve your goal? And then finally, what are the specific actions that you need to take, including the all-important first step, even if it's as simple as doing some research to find out what other people in that career, have studied, or, making a phone call to someone who might be able to make an introduction. Those small actions will build on themselves to help you go down the path that you're carving. And, as important as it is to figure out what you need to do, you also need to figure out how are you going to create accountability for yourselves. Anyone who's ever set a New Year's resolution knows how hard it is to follow up, even when we really, really want to achieve what we lay out. So how you name your goal matters. To give you an example, I set a goal one year of doing a certain number of workouts. I think it was I was going to work out 100 times during the year. And guess what? January rolls by, no workout. February rolls by, no workout. But, according to the little math I studied at Yale, I still had plenty of days to reach my goal. I had 300 days left and only 100 times I needed to work out. Well, guess what? That wasn't the best way to set it up. Instead, to create accountability and help me avoid procrastination, I should have made that more measured. So rather than 100 times in a year, what about, 5 times each month or 10 times each month, so that I could constantly evaluate how I was doing and hit small milestones along the way that would motivate me and keep me on track. The final thing to think about, which is often the thing that we either hesitate to do because we're not sure how committed we are, or we're hesitant to do because we're a little afraid of failure, is to share your plan. Share your goal, please, no matter how big, no matter how audacious it feels. Telling someone else will help create accountability for yourself as you start to do the actions that you need to do to move down the path. And then, of course, all of these things can come together. So this is an example of how you might write out a little plan for yourself, putting together the pieces that we've discussed. In this case, we're working with someone who has a goal of being promoted within the next 2 years. So that's their goal. It's specific, promoted to the next salary grade. So very specific. It's measurable, it's action-oriented, realistic, and based on their performance, and has a deadline. And so what are the activities? What will they have to do? In this case, they need to find out what the requirements are so that they can start to measure themselves and hit those requirements. They also need to raise their profile so that the folks who will be decision makers start to get to know them. And they need to talk to folks who are in similar roles to understand what the path is like, what the expectations are. So all of those things make this big goal a lot more measurable and a lot more attainable. And as you learn about the requirements, you'll figure out the skill gaps that you'll need to fill in order to get there. And of course, the all-important metrics, what will you have to do every month and what will you measure every month so that you're not waiting 2 years to figure out if you're doing what you need to do to get down the path. So an important thing to think about is, it is important, it's thrilling to dream big. I hope you have big dreams for yourself that you will turn into specific goals to which you will commit. But know that no matter how big the aspiration, Rome wasn't built in a day. So commit to do the small things that you can do every day to work towards even the biggest goals. Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour. This is just the start of what we hope will be a long conversation, including for the next 15 minutes of Q&A. So I'll start to take your questions now, but also in the meantime, as we do that, feel free to text the word Yale to the number 38470, and we will send you additional materials from today's session. I see a number of you in the chat box have asked for materials, so that's the way to get them. And then, of course, we'd love to stay in touch with you on LinkedIn. We'll move now into Q&A. Please continue to add your questions. We see it. First question comes from Stephen. During 4 years at Yale College, what are 1 to 2 really important things to keep in mind? I'd say, Stephen, the 2 things I would encourage you to do are, number 1, invest in your relationships, both with peers and with your professors and others who are interested and involved in your areas of interest. I've found that the relationships I built as a college student have, aged well, 20 plus years out of college, and have helped me develop as a person, but have also been really fundamental at different points of my career and opportunities when I've pivoted, being able to draw on that network of people to ask questions and get advice. The second thing I'd say is while you're at Yale College, explore. We all go with the amazing essay that says exactly how we are going to either conquer or save the world. And that's great, but be open to some other ideas. You may find an interest that you never imagined. So please, while you're being practical, also explore a little bit. You're in such a ripe environment to learn about almost anything. So I urge you to take advantage of it. Next question from Stephen. What are you most proud of from your time at Yale? The thing I am most enjoyed and I'm probably most proud of was the way in which I really studied what was meaningful to me. I majored in a major called Ethics, Politics, and Economics, which I now refer to as a choose your own adventure major. And the beauty of it was, in my case, you choose your focus. I chose healthcare policy, which allowed me to take classes at the Yale School of Management. And, I even dabbled at some things I could audit at the medical school. And I really had the opportunity to have a full Yale experience. And, coming from a family that hadn't had exposure to institutions like Yale, I'm really, really proud of the fact that I put myself out there and, kind of made my own way in such a special place. Ooh, okay, Stephen, you have some great questions here. One is, what do you most regret not having done during your time at Yale? And my answer to that is that I regret not having played some club sports or, even the fun things that, people did, the ultimate frisbee, the things that, looked easy, given my level of athletic incompetence. It probably would not have felt easy, but I wish I'd dabbled. To be more athletically involved. I've also seen over the course of my career how much the learning to lose, the learning to work together on a team that people who were involved in sports benefited from. So I regret not having a little bit of that. Next question is, how have you changed as a person or in your life views since you left Yale? And, I'd like to think I've grown in a lot of ways. I think one thing that is different about me kind of at my core from before I came to New Haven, entered the courts for the first time, is that I have a more fundamental understanding and appreciation for how alike people are. I came to Yale from Houston, and having grown up here and in a small town in Louisiana, and really thought of the Ivy League experience as this kind of hallowed thing. And what I found there were people who were equally curious and more alike, and more like me than they were different. I also realized that the things that made us different made us wonderful. And that understanding and that kind of experience of inclusion and awareness of the benefits of diversity, I think has changed my life and made me open to doing lots of things because, Yale showed me how flat the world and our experience can be. So, yeah, I would love to answer any other questions that you have. Please feel free to raise them. Ooh, Barbara has a great question. Have you ever struggled with self-confidence? And if so, what are some of the strategies to overcome those fears of not being good enough for what you want to achieve? Barbara, thank you so much for asking that question. Yes, I have definitely struggled with self-confidence at points and had the dreaded imposter syndrome, which we are gaining in our awareness of it. Um, and what I've found is that, what's worked for me and what has worked for my clients, I advise CEOs, CFOs of publicly traded companies and people who run very successful businesses, and know that even those hyper successful folks by most objective standards also have some imposter syndrome often. So we all feel it. And frankly, even the research shows the only thing that works is to just live into it. People say fake it until you make it. It's accept that things will feel scary, and that fear is probably a sign that you're doing the right thing, that you have gotten outside of your comfort zone and set yourself up to do something that is harder and hopefully better. So know that, feeling that moment of doubt or imposter syndrome puts you in very good company. You are on the precipice of doing something bigger and better. So just accept it. Another great question. What advice would you give women of color who struggle to get ahead when often overqualified but undervalued? Wow. Yes, I have been there as well, as an African American woman, and oftentimes as a Southern woman. I find that people have doubted my capabilities no matter how objectively strong I thought they were. And, I've accepted that I can't change other people's perceptions, but I can be my best self and accept that I have done the work, I've paid my dues, and I'm willing to, put forth my best in whatever situation I come into. I've also noticed, frankly, I have a little bit of a cup is half full tinge to me. And I've accepted that there are sometimes some benefits to standing out a little bit. As an African American woman from the South on Wall Street, named Precious, by the way, there were a lot of me running around. And, that meant sometimes that people didn't know what to do with me or didn't know how to put me in a box. But it also meant that they remembered me. And, I benefited from just being a little bit more memorable because I stood out. And I took advantage of that. I also found that sometimes people were less threatened by me and asked questions of me that they didn't ask of my colleagues. And that allowed me to form relationships that helped me to get ahead. So, where you can make lemon out of lemonade, where you don't feel like you're going to have opportunities because of who you are, pivot and find a better platform. Next question is about branding and LinkedIn. Is LinkedIn the best place to focus when building one's online brand? And I'd say for most people professionally, the answer is yes. We've invested in it meaningfully, and we have an online course to help you learn how to do LinkedIn better. And do a lot of training on LinkedIn, despite the fact that I generally am not a proponent of social media. I don't have a Facebook account. I'm very, very private. But I think the opportunities that LinkedIn presents to network and to maintain relationships, even as your friends and colleagues move around, makes it worth it. And, just the tone on LinkedIn is so constructive and so helpful that I'd suggest that at minimum you start there. Next question comes from Judy, who asks, what steps can you recommend if you don't know what goal to set, especially for young grads or women returning to the workforce after a break? Judy, that's a tough one. And, particularly given the philosophy that I shared, that it is as important that you be authentic to yourself as it is that you do any of these things. And so, I'd say start with the self-exploration to both think about what interests you now, but oftentimes what used to interest you. What kinds of things in your last work environment sparked your excitement? What were you happy to do even when it took longer than you thought it would? Those little things are nuggets. For me, as I mentioned, am an introvert, but when I was in high school, I competed a lot in speaking competitions. And so, as I was starting to think about what are the components I wanted to bring to this business, I remembered the joy I felt, even as an introvert, when I was speaking in front of a crowd. And so, I very purposefully have built out a platform to do keynote speaking and training and speaking at conferences because I love it. And that's a joy that, goes back a long way. But, just doing the self reflection to dig deeper there helped me to recognize that that could be a great benefit. One of the resources, by the way, Judy, that we're going to be sharing in the follow-up materials is an article that I think walks you through a great process for doing that self-evaluation and self-management. And what may be one of our final questions, we have a few minutes left, is how do you reset when you're stuck or you're stalled in these ascents? I love the branding, Abigail. Thank you for the shout out. We really do think of progression as an ascent. And like an ascent up a mountain, you are largely, you might have some safety net, but you're going to be progress based on your own energy, your own decisions, every move that you make as an individual. And so, I'd say when you feel stuck, decide on the next move. Remember that rock wall. You can't know when you're at the bottom exactly which of those rocks you're going to need to make it to the top, but just make the next move. Even if sometimes it feels like a little bit of a lateral move, you just need to stay in movement. Keep taking the next step that feels best and most authentic to you. And before you know it, you will have ended up, in a place that's more compelling or more consistent with your goals. Okay, and then final question is there a way to get today's materials that's not through email? Please share your, through email. Yes, of course, we can figure that out. If you're comfortable, I think only we can see this chat box. So if you want to share your email address, we would be happy to email it to you. You're also welcome to email us with that request. My email address is at the bottom of the screen, precious@imptopconsulting.com. You can also go to learn more about our company at www.imptopconsulting.com. But please email me if you're not able to text. I'd be happy to send you those follow-up resources. Any other questions?
Precious, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful and informative presentation. This is Elaine again. Once again, in case you have missed this, I know you addressed it a little bit. This presentation will be available on the Office of Career Strategies website, which is ocs.yale.edu, in approximately 2 weeks. Precious also gave some information of how you can contact her directly. Our career management webinar series for alums will continue in 2020. Details to follow via email. Thanks, everyone, and have a fabulous day. Bye-bye.